My friends, take a deep breath. It is going to be okay. I know last night's election results, it might have looked a little discouraging at first glance, but let's get one thing straight. This was not some grand referendum on Republicans. What we saw was a full-blown family feud inside the Democrat Party. Now I'm going to break down each race and explain what this really means for the midterms and for the future of the conservative movement. But first, I want you to remember something important. Democrats winning in deep blue states doesn't change a thing about where this country is headed. Trust me, I spent half the night helping my father-in-law process what happened in New York City. God bless him. And that conversation inspired me to show you why these results might actually be good news for Republicans. So stick with me, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and let's unpack why the media's Democrat victory lap might actually be the prelude to their biggest stumble yet. Well, it is official. A socialist just beat the Democrats in their own backyard, and he even threw in a salute straight out of history's worst chapters. Take a look at this. I'm sure the media is all over it, right? No, crickets. I guess the salute is only an issue if you support Republicans. But as for AOC, she couldn't wait to take her victory lap before Mamdani even hit the stage. Watch this.
They were not just tasked with defeating a Republican. They were also tasked with defeating the old guard of the Democratic Party that essentially led us to many of the perils of this moment. So he had a two-front war to win, which is what makes his victory so deeply impressive. And I do think that this moment, a lot of people who are willing to talk about party unity when it serves them, but not party unity when it serves everybody, it puts those folks on notice.
Yes, we must fight fascism with communism. Make that message make sense. And wow, that whole unity speech was a not-so-subtle jab at Chuck Schumer, who refused to tell the American people just hours before who he voted for in the New York City mayoral race.
Today is election day in New York City. Did you vote for Monty or Cuomo?
Look, I voted, and I look forward to working with the next mayor to help New York City.
He clearly wasn't backing the socialists, and part of me respects that, but come on, Chuck. Just be honest. Voters deserve to know where their so-called representatives actually stand. I mean, transparency isn't a radical idea, it's the bare minimum. Now, here's the truth. He's dodging Mamdani because he knows exactly what those policies are. Free buses, rent freezes, opening the floodgates to illegal immigration. It's basically a Republican campaign ad written for them. Watch how these radical ideas, coupled with a refusal to actually strengthen the police, will dominate the midterms. And if Democrats are nervous about Mamdani's endorsement now, just wait until next year when they try to run completely away from it. It's going to be a glorious political theater. Now, speaking of unity, if AOC wants to lecture America on that, let's check in with her new hero, Zohran Mamdani, to see what unity looks like in socialist speak.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
Well, that doesn't exactly scream unity. I mean, that sounds more like a campaign rally for division, aimed squarely at half the country. The guy's talking about defeating Trump's supporters, not serving all New Yorkers. I mean, he just alienated his constituents who don't want their city overrun by illegals and actually want a safer New York. Maybe try fixing the crime rate before declaring war on your political opponents. Now, in the middle of all my head shaking last night, I'll admit there was one moment that gave me a good laugh. During Mamdani's big post-election celebration, the projector got hacked. Did you see this? It was flashing a message reminding everyone that President Trump is still president. I mean, come on. Trump versus a self-proclaimed socialist? That is meme gold. Now, the president, shortly after the news broke, he wrote, quote, "And so it begins." Now, Scott Jennings over on CNN, he summed it up like this last night.
Just want to offer condolences to Chuck Schumer. Honestly, what I'm reading here in New York City is that AOC is going to be the next senator from New York. after she gets done whooping his rear end in the 2028 Democratic primary. And for his Senate races in 2026, I see the energy in the Democratic Party tonight behind a socialist, and I see the energy in Virginia, Democrats looking the other way on a violent candidate for attorney general who says he wants to murder Republicans and their children. If you think you're getting rid of Graham Plattner in Maine now, think again. This is a terrible night for national Democratic image, given what is happening inside their party. Mamdani is an avowed socialist. It's not what people say that he is, it's what he says that he is.
New York City has officially become the country's newest social experiment. I mean, part circus, part cautionary tale. The problem? The ringleaders are Gen Z voters who can say socialism, but couldn't define it if Karl Marx himself handed them the dictionary.
What is Mamdani's best policy?
Childcare for all.
What's he going to do for childcare?
He's going to make it available for everyone.
Where does the money come from?
Well, he's explained that over and over. So there's going to be there's money, there's wasted money, and
Where can I find where he's explained it?
Go to the website.
I voted for Mamdani.
Do you feel like socialism would work in New York City?
No, not necessarily.
They can't tell you where the money comes from, but they're sure it's available for everyone. Perfect. Just what every bankrupt city needs: more enthusiasm and less math. I mean, these people don't study history. They just scroll through TikTok, right? They think socialism is a vibe, not an economic collapse. Venezuela, Cuba, those aren't vacation spots. They're warning labels. But hey, if you don't want to learn from history, you're just going to have to live through it yourself. Now, everybody's been talking about who's going to be leaving New York. But let's be honest. The real story is who's moving in. If you're a criminal, congratulations, this is your moment. Mamdani's basically turning Rikers into an Airbnb. I'm not saying criminals should move there, but let's just say the welcome mat is out and the locks are off. If you don't want to work, no problem. New York's about to become the capital of the identify as unemployed movement. And if you're in the country illegally, pack your bags, because you have officially hit the jackpot. Free benefits, free protection, and absolutely zero accountability. And of course, all the Democrat socialists, they'll be lining up too. I mean, they finally found a place where other people's money is growing on taxpayer trees. And of course, joining the party, Muslims, who are now claiming New York City to be theirs.
We're done hiding. We're done. We're done being tortured and hurt and judged. This is the correct religion. This is the religion that all of humanity needs to be upon, of Islam. And we will not stop until it enters every home. There is no God worthy of worship except Allah, the God of Jesus, the God of Moses, the God of Abraham, and the God of the last and final prophet Muhammad.
This is just Act 1 of their plan. America, you better wake the heck up, because if Mamdani-style politics takes hold, I can tell you exactly who won't be sticking around in the Big Apple. Job creators, investors, families who want safe streets for their kids, and basically anyone who believes criminals should actually be behind bars. That's the migration pattern you should be worried about. Now, there was a small win of the night. Minneapolis voters, they rejected socialism. They rejected Omar Fattah. Jacob Frey scraped out a re-election, not by first pick, but a clear no to socialism. So Minnesota, congratulations, you picked the less disastrous option. As for the voters in Virginia, they saw these text messages written by Attorney General, now Jay Jones, messages that called for the murder of his political opponent as well as the children. He called the children fascist. He said he wanted to urinate on their graves. And Virginia said, yep, he's our guy. He deserves to be Virginia's top cop. We don't have a Republican problem. The Democrat Party has a moral problem.
51% of the people in Virginia just said they want someone to be their attorney general, the top law enforcement official, who said he wanted the Speaker of the House in Virginia to be murdered and Republican children to be murdered. Let that sink in about just how dark of a landscape that paints.
You want to see how Republicans versus Democrats are treated when they're caught up in a scandal? Take, for example, Republican Mark Robinson of North Carolina. He said racial and sexual things online. And what did Republicans do? They rejected him by 15 points while electing Trump by 3. We don't tolerate that behavior, even if you have an R next to your name. The Democrats, on the other hand, they were faced with an even bigger moral test. Their Democrat candidate for AG, Jay Jones, who we just talked about supporting murder for his political opponent as well as his children, he won. We are not the same. There are clearly two standards here. And then, speaking of Jay Jones, in a moment so bizarre it belongs in a bad web series, footage surfaced of him yesterday allegedly trying to kick a dog and thankfully missing. Look, there's an old saying for a reason. Never trust someone who isn't kind to animals. It tells you a lot about judgment, impulse control, and basic decency. As for the governor-elect alongside Jay Jones is Abigail Spanberger. Again, another candidate that Democrat voters are clearly not educated on.
You're a Spanberger supporter. What about her agenda did you really like?
I'm really interested in seeing how we can improve women's rights. We need to get those back reinstated.
Look, I actually agree that we should fight for women's rights, but let's be honest about which rights we're talking about. That woman's version of women's rights means defending abortion well into the third trimester because their state already allows them up to 26.6 weeks. That's not empowerment, that's extremism. Meanwhile, the real fight for women's rights has moved somewhere else, to our locker rooms, bathrooms, sports fields, and even our prisons. We are fighting for basic privacy, safety, and fairness. We're fighting for the right of our daughters to compete against other biological females and not lose scholarships to men who simply declare they're women. We are fighting to make sure women behind bars aren't subjected to cruel and unusual punishment by being locked up with men. So no, voting for Spanberger and calling it a vote for women's rights isn't progressive, it's actually backwards. It defies logic and insults every woman who's actually had to fight for equal opportunity and safety.
There's a lot of people who've, never met a trans person, whether they're a trans youth or an adult. And so there's a real effort to engage in some level of fear-mongering. And, I really do believe that we should, as a society as a whole, demonstrate a fair amount of grace to people who are confused about, when we're talking about bathrooms or when we're talking about sports participation, like what are we talking about?
What are you talking about? And I don't call asking biological males to stay out of female private spaces fear-mongering. I call it common sense and a safety issue for girls. If you want to provide a safe space for those who, in your words, you call confused, which, by the way, I agree with, then create a separate space for them to feel comfortable in. But don't do it at the expense of my daughters. And for those acting like Virginia's results were some huge blow to Republicans, let's be real. Virginia's been voting blue in every presidential election since 2008. It's a Democrat state. Democrats winning in Virginia is about as shocking as rain in Seattle. If a Republican wins there, that's the upset. So no, this wasn't a referendum on the GOP. It was a reminder that Democrats are still clinging to control in their own backyard. Now, the same story in New Jersey with the governor's race. I know a lot of you were hoping Jack Ciattarelli might pull this off. I was too. But let's be real. Jersey is a blue state. These are races Democrats should be winning. Disappointment is expected. Shock would be the news. Now, over here in my neck of the woods in California, Prop 50 passed. Again, no surprise there. Gavin Newsom now has the green light to gerrymander Republicans right out of representation. And his message last night? Basically an open invitation for every Democratic-run state to join the party.
We need the state of Virginia. We need the state of Maryland. We need our friends in New York, in Illinois, in Colorado. We need to see other states, the remarkable leaders that have been doing remarkable things, meet this moment head on as well.
And Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, he's raising his hand like a good little soldier, ready to play along.
Tell us about this effort. Are you trying to Trump-proof any election rigging? And if so, does that mean you have a partisan agenda in this project?
No, it just simply means that I want to make sure that Maryland has fair maps come next November when people vote. And, and just to remind people why we are here, the reason that we are even in this situation is Donald Trump decided that he wanted to try to rig elections because he knew that his policies weren't popular.
What is this guy talking about? Because requiring voter ID, monitoring polling places, and trying to level the gerrymandering playing field is suddenly rigging? Meanwhile, Democrats push redistricting as fairness. I mean, voters need to pay attention. 2026, it's going to be critical. No Republicans and no independents can afford to stay home. And if you ask Democrats why they're winning races they should have already had, the answer is predictable. They blame Republicans and the government shutdown.
Well, Donald Trump and Republicans shut the government down and refused to reopen it. Donald Trump has spent the last 35 days more time on the golf course, more time talking to Hamas and more time talking to the Chinese Communist Party than to Democrats on Capitol Hill who represent half the country.
Really? If we're counting rounds of golf, let's remember Joe Biden's weekly 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. work schedule, just 5 days a week, with beach sessions every weekend. Radio silence from the media on that one. But Trump squeezes in a game between peace deals, hostage negotiations, and putting America first, and there's outrage. At least I can say CNN's Dana Bash, she did try to push back ever so slightly.
You guys are voting no on opening the government, not Republicans. I know you're asking for specific things, and it's much more complicated than that. We'll get to that in one second.
Hold on a second, Dana, because let's just be clear about that.
Okay.
The American people clearly understand who's responsible for shutting down the government.
Yeah, but you said they shut down the government.
They did shut down the government. They have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and Donald Trump has spent the last few days saying to Republicans in the Senate, you have the power to reopen the government. They refuse to do it.
What the Democrats are hoping they can force Republicans to do is basically break the filibuster in an effort to end the shutdown. This would then set the precedent for Democrats to use the nuclear option as if it's just a minor rule change. But make no mistake, this isn't about efficiency. It's about power. The moment that 60-vote guardrail is gone, they've already told us what's next. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to add 2 new blue states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. They would rewrite the election laws, federalize abortion, and bulldoze whatever checks still stand in their way. They call it democracy reform, but it's a one-party rule disguised as good intentions. And as predicted, just hours after the election, Democrats are demanding Trump meet with them to end the shutdown. Everything you need to know about the party is right there. They will make anybody suffer if it improves their shot at power. Here's Mark Wayne Mullen making that prediction just yesterday.
Chuck Schumer, in a private meeting with other Democrat senators, said that if you'll just wait till after the election, I'll release the handcuffs. I added the handcuff part, but basically I'm paraphrasing what he said. The reason why is because they're afraid their base wouldn't show up today in Virginia, New Jersey, and in New York. So it's been about politics. It's never been about policy. It's been about holding the American people as leverage points, regardless of the damage they cause to the livelihood of these individuals. But elections are more important than the Dems because why? They know their polls is at the very bottom than it's ever been for the Democrat Party, and it's shameful what they're doing.
Exactly. Shameful, predictable, and yet entirely avoidable if Americans stay alert, get involved, and hold your leaders accountable. This is power politics at its finest, and it's why every vote, every voice, and every action at this point counts. Now, coming up next, James Comey tries to get his case being led by the DOJ tossed, but instead, it backfires spectacularly. Wait until you see the new evidence just put before the judge. And Pam Bondi, she drops an alarming bombshell showing President Trump is just the latest victim in Jack Smith's Arctic frost probe. Go ahead, click on that video you see now on your screen. I'll see you over there. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow.